Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for counsellors, psychotherapists, and counselling students. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hi, I'm Rory, and welcome to a special edition of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Ken's taking a well-earned break, but I'm joined by Daragh McLoughlin from WebHealer, who's going to take us through what blogging is and the importance of blogging when you have a website. And this really links to episode 294, for those of you who are regular listeners, 294 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast, where we talked about writing to thrive, unlocking new counselling clients through blogging. So Daragh McLoughlin, thank you so much for joining us again.
Hi Rory, how's it going?
It's going great. And it's really good to have you back on, because one of the things that I know that from the feedback we get from the audience is, or the listener, as we should say, is that you really give really good value in terms of, if you have a website, how to optimize it to get the biggest bang for your buck, to help a practitioner have a sustainable practice, an ethical, sustainable practice. And part of what we're going to talk today, in fact, all of what we're going to talk about today is what blogging is and how we can make the most of blogging, maybe to get in front of customers, clients, and they are our customers after all, and maybe to give yourself a more of a widespread way of promoting yourself and your ideas across the internet. So, I mean, first of all, if we're thinking about blogging, what actually is a blog?
That's a great question. Blogging actually is a very early internet concept when it comes to websites. The original term for the historians amongst us was web logs, and then that morphed into blogs. And what it was effectively was like an online diary, a diary of thoughts and musings that you had on one subject or another. But in today's world of websites, a blog is a section on your website, and it's not always called a blog. It might be called a journal, insights. Sometimes it's called news. It depends on, I suppose, the business type you're in. But blog is totally appropriate. It's a great place to put additional content, subject matter, expertise that's separate to your website, because when it comes to a website and somebody visiting your website, you don't want to bog them down in too much information. You want to lay out your stall very clearly, who you are, what services you offer, some FAQs, information on pricing and location, things that we've spoken about in some of other conversations. The blog is kind of like a separate section of your website, reserved for this gold, which is your expertise and your thoughts and, I suppose, more granular detail on how you could help people in various different situations. So you'll find at the top of the website, it's not usually the first or second menu item that you might have. It's usually last or before the contact us. We've probably all, come across websites and that have had blogs, and maybe you regularly read a blog as well. So hopefully that kind of clears up what a blog is and how it looks on a website.
Yes, it's really interesting, because I've recently been reading a book by a person called Marcus Sheridan, called They Ask, You Answer. And it's about the changing nature of the internet and how people search for information. And they're now looking more for someone who's answering their questions. So I guess a blog is going to be a partial starter of a conversation with a client. A client may be saying, I've got anxiety. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I feel like I'm the only person in the world with this anxiety. They search the internet and then they find information by a practitioner who says, this is what anxiety is and this is what could cause it and this is how I could help. So it really does start an initial conversation before that person's even met the practitioner. They're already getting a sense of how they're working, what their knowledge is, a sense of reassurance, perhaps, saying to someone, you're not the only person in the world. This is something that happens to a lot of people. That can be a mighty big relief to a lot of people who think, they're going not very politically correct, but crazy with mental and emotional well-being. So as a starting point, it's really useful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a blog allows you to speak to lots of nuances for a particular condition. So, you mentioned anxiety there. There can be many different types of anxiety. And again, coming back to this concept of why use a blog to talk about it. Well, if there's 5 different types of anxiety that you can help people with, it might be a little bit anxiety inducing to mention them all on your website under your services alongside everything else you do. So the blog allows you to lay them out in great detail on their own page. So you can talk about anxiety maybe with public speaking, anxiety, in a social settings, etc. And every single blog that you write, you can get into real granular detail about the types of questions that people might have when it comes to this particular situation, condition, whatever you'd like to call it. And so you can speak directly to the person who may be enduring this, and it allows you to really get into detail about how you can help them. So it's a great conversation starter, because if somebody is looking for help with social anxiety and they come across a blog post that you have written 300-500 words on, and you go through the start, middle, and end of a journey, maybe that somebody would go on if they had social anxiety, in terms of how they might be feeling right now, how it manifests itself, what's the first step to getting help, what the process looks like, and what the outcomes usually are, and how that usually looks. If you suffer from something and you can see that somebody has a roadmap for putting you at ease at that, or reducing the impact of that particular condition, instantly you're going to be feeling more comfortable about reaching out to this particular counselor or psychotherapist, because they understand you. And that blog post is a fantastic opportunity to show that you understand them where they're at. And you're not limited to the number of blog posts you write, so you can write many blog posts. Some of our clients have over 100 blog posts on their simple website, even though the main body of the website is only 4 or 5 pages. But you can speak to every single nuance of work that you do, and how you can help people, and the various different conditions. So it's like putting many different fishing lines into the water at once. It's fantastic from that point of view, to open the conversation and to put people at ease with you and give them confidence, such that they know you are somebody who can help them with this. So fantastic tool for that process of the know, like, and trust. We're building trust there straight away with a potential client.
Yeah, and I think you build it. I think you have an interesting point here, is that you might have a client who looks at it, or might have a person who looks at it and then thinks, oh, that's great, that, and then goes away, doesn't really think about therapy. And then a friend says, I'm having anxiety, and they go, oh, I saw a great website the other day. I will send you the link. I'll put it on the social media. So what's happening is you're having those kind of what they used to call in the 80s water cooler moments, where you're having a conversation with it could be a friend or a colleague at a water cooler. That's why they call water cooler moments, just reference that. And what happens is that information is being shared on, and your information is becoming more widely known, which I guess gives us the understanding that part of building that know, like, and trust is being authoritative, sometimes in your own right because of what you've studied and your own level of knowledge. And also maybe what you've done with peers, work you've done with peers, and also things you've got published. You may have had something published in a professional journal or a magazine, or you may have, as I recently have, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but I probably am, a page.
Rory.
Yes, trumpet blowing over here. Having a chapter of a book. I've recently contributed to a chapter in a book. All these are real conversation starters that can put you in front of lots and lots of people, some of which may be your clients who may reach out to become a client.
Very true. If you specialize in a particular area and you take heed to write about that on your blog, there is no doubt about it, in the eyes of potential clients, but also in terms of the search engines, really important, as we know, you're building that authority. And listeners to the podcast will know I've referenced a term before, which is expertise, authority, and trust, or EAT, one of the core fundamentals of Google's ranking algorithm. And so when we have authority on something, we're saying and we're demonstrating that we know what we're talking about. Now, if Google is looking to show a searcher results after they search for a keyword or a key phrase, they want to show that person websites that are an authority on a subject. If you're not an authority, you might point somebody in the wrong direction, or the service level mightn't be fantastic. And you'll say to Google, why did you give me that website? So Google is always looking for people who are an authority on something, that has expertise, authority, and they're trustworthy. So authoritativeness is really, really important. And one way to build that is blogging. Another way to build that is to blog and to share that blog with your colleagues. Because as you've said, you can collect links as a result of that. So people will link back to your blog. And again, in the eyes of Google, Google looks at that. Maybe it's a citation. Maybe somebody's referencing your thought piece on something, as in maybe a certain technique that has been pioneered for a particular treatment or something like that. And they're referring to your website and how you talk about how it works in our example of the case of social anxiety. And they're saying, well, Rory has written a blog post and here's a link to the blog post. And he talks about technique X, Y, and Z for working with clients who suffer from social anxiety. Google loves this, and you will benefit from your colleagues referencing your blog post. So I would put it out there that if you write a blog and you have a colleague that perhaps writes a blog, speak to each other about perhaps referencing each other's blog posts and linking to them. That won't go down badly at all. In fact, if anything, it should help. As long as it's done in a value add way and not in a spammy, just for the sake of it way. If there is real value in a colleague's blog, maybe they're the other side of the country. Maybe you have a full practice at this moment in time, or maybe they practice a certain type of therapy that you don't specialize in. If it makes sense to link them over to your colleague's website, do it. And Google will reward you for that. Now, if you write good content on your blog, you're probably going to pick up links naturally anyways. But in putting it out there as a kind of a to-do, if you know somebody and it makes sense to make a referral by way of a link on a blog post, then ask them to do it. It will work well and it will work in your favor. And if the search engines come across this, they will put you further up the rankings. And that means that you're more likely to begin a conversation with a client, which what it's all about at the end of the day. It's not about getting claps in the back from your colleagues who are fully signed up to your way of working, but the search engines will promote you higher in the rankings. Therefore, your website will get more exposure. More exposure is more visits, more inquiries, and more inquiries is more client hours, which, as I said, is what it's all about. So really encourage building that authoritativeness, and where possible, have your peers cite your work, link to your work, if it makes sense to do so. Think about that before you go asking, but if it makes sense to do so, do it. It will help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of being collaborative. In our profession, in the counselling and psychotherapeutic professions, we may. There's quite a few people that I've interviewed on the podcast that I greatly admire their work. I greatly admire their outliers who are really ploughing the new ground. I've spoken about Kath Nibbs and cyber trauma on many occasions, and I'll give her a little bit of a plug because she really is ploughing new ground, and certainly. What I've done is when we've been talking about children attachment and exposure to the internet and how that can be traumatic and how that can build a kind of false attachment and the trauma of seeing some content that's now on a lot of social media, by linking it to someone who's a real expert in it, you're actually doing your colleagues a favour. You're saying, look, this is what I'm experiencing in my practice. But if you really want to see someone who is an authoritative voice on this, then here's a link and send them over to their website and their resources. And I think you're doing two things there. One, you are showing that you the level of your knowledge and who you reference professionally, which I always think is useful to say to people, look, this is my level of knowledge and this is where I'm gaining my CPD from. But I think it's also useful to share with your colleagues who are the movers and shakers, for want of a better phraseology, in this particular discipline, who are the people who are doing the thinking. So really by sharing it, you're offering not only a service to clients, but you're offering a service to the wider therapeutic community, and that can only be a good thing.
I agree. You're advancing the profession. And I think, a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think it's a win-win-win for all concerned. And at the end of the day, if you are a subject matter expert on something and somebody does refer to your blog with a link from their own and you get promoted in the search, you're going to be on front of more clients who need help from somebody like you. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You're in this business to help people. That is your vocation. That is what you're good at. You're naturally gifted at and skilled at. Therefore, it's just a win for everybody concerned. So totally agree with your point. I think it's fantastic. I mean, the other side of the thing is we talked obviously about authority. The other one is trustworthiness. So we might have mentioned it at the outset there, whereby you can build trust with potential clients. A great way, and it's seldom done, but I would encourage people to see if they can squeeze it into their blog somewhere from a trust point of view, is testimonials. Now, when it comes to mental health, not everybody is delighted to be jumping up and down saying, I've been to, so many counselling sessions and I'm feeling great now. It's becoming more acceptable to talk about it, as it should be. So we must tread carefully here. We can't go asking for client testimonials and expecting everybody to give them willingly, because everybody's at a very, different stage in their journey. But where possible, on an anonymized basis, talking about how you help certain clients, maybe getting some initials, maybe, something that is user generated, client generated, a testimonial or something like that. If you can squeeze that into the blog, would be fantastic, because there's a rule of marketing, people want what other people have. And so if I know that you have helped 100 other people with social anxiety and I have social anxiety, then I want to work with you too. That's just as simple as that. Because if it's good enough for the other 100 people, it's good enough for me too. So something that looks like a client testimonial. I'm not saying fake it. I'm saying I appreciate that people are going to say, oh yes, Daragh McLoughlin, London, WC1N, 3XX. I was to Rory there for 20 sessions and he's fantastic. I'm not expecting that granularity, but I'm saying see what you can eke out with some clients. I think, again, it will work to bring new clients to you, and it builds trust. Professional credentials also can build a trust, and your website, the main body of your website, should most certainly have your professional credentials on them, especially on your About Me page. But your blog is a fantastic place to put them. And I'd like to introduce a new concept that we're trialing at the moment to some success, I might add. Usually when you read an article, be it in the newspaper or online, it's signed by an author who wrote this. So it might be just a name. But more and more, we're seeing this concept of an author box, which is a repeatable piece of information. So the same piece of information appended to the bottom of a blog about who the author is. So in your case, Rory, would be, this is Rory Lees-Oakes. Rory has been a counsellor for X number of years. And it's a short synopsis of who you are. 2 to 3 lines. I usually like to say who he is, how long Rory's been practicing, and what his interests are, and then something that's maybe a little bit more generic, like Rory likes playing golf the weekend at the end. And it's a good balance of professional and Rory. And we find that when we append this to the bottom of blogs, that Google trusts the content more, because it says, well, Rory's been counselling for 20 years and he just wrote this article above. Wow, this is trustworthy content. Therefore, if it's trustworthy content, I'm going to show it in the search. And if I'm going to show it in the search, more people will view it, more people inquire, people become clients, etc. And so we go around again. So blogs, fantastic for enhancing your trustworthiness. And how you would do that would be seeking out some client testimonials, acknowledging that you're not going to get, very verbose testimonials. Do your best, but also great opportunity to talk about your professional credentials. Even if you attend a CPD session, even if you go to an event that your ethical body runs, talk about the event, say that you were there. That demonstrates that you are bought into continuous professional development, that you're interested in enhancing your skill set as a counsellor. And if you can demonstrate that, it also keeps your website up to date as well, because obviously these events happen on the regular. Having an up-to-date website, Google loves. Your blog is a great opportunity to be adding content regularly. Remember this original concept, a web blog or a diary, that's the kind of concept that it is. So if your diary, you've got entries in your diary frequently, it shows that you're active on your website. So if you've been to 2 or 3 events through the year, write a blog that summarizes the event, what you spoke about, who you met, what you learned. Really good. And it shows potential clients as well that you're interested in continuous professional development. Nobody likes people who are stuck in the past with maybe old systems and techniques. They want somebody who's always up to date, always learning, a lifelong learner. So a blog is a fantastic opportunity to convey those credentials.
Yes, I like that. And I think I'll pick up on 2 of the points you made. The first point is asking for client credentials, asking for a testimonial. That's the word I was looking for, a testimonial. And a few years ago this was quite frowned upon, and we shouldn't be directly, I don't think, saying, oh, by the way, now comes to the end of the session, if you could just do me a testimonial, that'd be great. But I do think that there is a place, depending on where the practitioner feels they are, and obviously the client, to say, if you want to leave me a testimonial, I have a Google page where people can log in and leave me a review. You don't need to use your own name. And I know that quite a few therapists do this. And I think it's a good idea, because if someone's coming to you for therapy, someone wants the help, they may be uncertain, they may be unsure. And if they see that other people have had help and got what they wanted and have been helped by you, that is certainly going to assuage any fears or any reluctance to come to therapy. I think we've moved past being a secretive profession. We're a confidential profession for sure, but we're not a secretive profession. And I think that could be very, very handy. So maybe worth thinking about how might you be able to build that into your practice to say, if you want to, at the end, if you want to, we've got a Google, a Google form that you could just go onto the internet and fill it in, and you can give us a review if you want. If you don't, that's fine. And of course, it's being public information, then you can just link to that or talk about it. And I do like the idea of being able to put your own credentials at the bottom of your blog, because one of the things that struck me as you were telling me this, Daragh, was that if the mainstream media are looking for an expert voice, they've got everything, haven't they? They've got the expertise of what's being spoken about, and also a kind of canned biography of who's speaking about it. So, it could be that if it's a very specialist area and someone's looking for maybe an interview, or they're looking for a piece to reference in a news article or a magazine article, they can pick this up and they can cite it. And because you put your own details in, and you've said who you are and what your expertise are and maybe what your hobbies are, you've done all the hard work. It's a very easy piece of information to share and repurpose.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, especially when it comes to journalism, apparently, because there's many different news sources out there, and one would question maybe the origin of some of the news. But if you put your credentials at the bottom of your blog post, well, instantly, it's like ye old hot wax stamp, where, it just goes to frame what you've written and qualify it as saying, I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for quite some time. Thank you very much. So I'm trustworthy. And, you mentioned the word repurpose. And I think the great thing about a blog is that you can repurpose that content as well. every week we talk to counselors and psychotherapists who are asking us about social media. Should they be on social media? How can they use social media to promote their practices? There's good few counselors who would be on Twitter, or X as it's known now, and obviously a lot of people on Instagram. It's, in my opinion, harder to be on Instagram because obviously Instagram is very visual, and it can be hard to create content for that platform when it comes to counseling. But what I would say is that if you create content on your blog, you can share that on social media. And what you're doing is you're putting it out there for several reasons. You're putting it out there to stimulate discussion with your colleagues. I don't think a potential client is going to debate you on something, but you're putting it out there and you're giving it more exposure. So your clients will interact with it, or so your colleagues will interact with it. They may share it, and comes back to this concept of citations and how Google will see, oh, look at this piece of content. We saw it in the search. Now it's appearing on social media. Now some people are talking about it and debating it. This content originally came from Rory. This is good, valuable content. People like it. People are engaging in debate about it. And you might say to yourself, does Google actually say that? The answer is yes. These are called social signals. And when you have a piece of content or a link to a website that's on social media in whatever guys are, in this case, we're talking about a discussion around, a thought piece perhaps that you wrote on your blog about a specific area. I'm trying to think of something controversial. I can't think of it right now, but if you wrote something controversial, we'll call it quote unquote controversial, and you wanted to put it out there, you get some debate going. Google is going to see it. It's going to see that all these people are chiming in on it, and it's going to say, wow, this guy can stimulate debate. He knows what he's talking about. People are engaging in this, and you will attract more attention from the search engines. More attention is good for your website in the search rankings. So that's one thing, fantastic. But also, if you have a social media profile and I say to a friend of mine, you need to check out Rory if you're thinking about counseling. Rory's fantastic. So they say, okay, right, I'll check out Rory. They'll Google Rory. They'll look at Rory's website. And it's great, okay. And maybe they see that Rory is on Twitter or Rory's on Instagram. So they say, oh, well, I'm on Instagram as well. I'll open up my phone and search for Rory's page. So they search for Rory's page and they see that Rory is quite active on Instagram, and he's posting all of these blog posts about, topic A, B, C, and that he's putting himself out there, that he's demonstrating his expertise, and that he's engaging with people in respectful discourse about the ups and downs of whatever he's writing. That can only bolster your credentials and your trustworthiness. And it shows that you're interested, and you're not hiding behind, your website, that you're interested in putting yourself out there and saying, well, this is what I believe. This, I think, is, a way to achieve success with a particular condition or a nuance of therapy. And you're active. And somebody who's active is, I suppose, somebody who can probably help. And therefore, I think it can only be good idea to repurpose your blogs and your thought piece online, because it does stimulate that discussion, attracts the attention of the search engines. And when people are checking you out, doing their due diligence on you before they pick up the phone or fill out your contact form, if they see that you're active online, it just gives them something else to work with. If they come to a social media page and you just got a picture of your dog from 3 years ago, you're not really giving them anything. So repurposing your content online, it means that you're padding out your social media profile as much as you are your website, and that can only be a good thing.
Yes, and while you were speaking about that, I wrote down, this is what I work with, and this is what I know about something, and someone in, say, in a social media page says, I've got social anxiety, and you pop in and you say, oh, I'm a therapist, I work with social anxiety, and I can be of help, and give me a number. You could really be seen as a bit of a grifter, I think. Someone who's taking an opportunity to try and get a bit of business from someone who's going through a bit of a tough time. However, if you dropped in an article and say, oh, this is really interesting, I've wrote a piece about this is what I know, and you share that information, then what happens is that you're seen in a totally different light. You're seen as someone who's freely sharing your knowledge, and should that person think, maybe this is the therapist for me, they can reach out and contact you. And it just struck me that it's a very nuanced way of sharing the information, but also, saying, potentially you might want to work with me, but this is what I know. And if you've, come and see the rest of my website, and people follow, they'll look at the blog. And I think it's a very respectful way of introducing a topic, introducing help, because we're all about helping therapists, introducing a bit of help and a bit of insight. And then there's a potential of someone saying, I think this person is the person for me.
Yeah, and God knows we need a bit of respect and a bit of helpfulness on social media, at least, because, it's gone to the dogs in recent times. So you're right. You're not going to be seen as that grifter. It's about adding value, and it's about actually genuinely trying to help. And as you say, it's a take it or leave it type thing. I've written something of value. I believe it's of value. I hope it helps you. But if you want to talk to me, well, I'll answer my phone. I'll reply to your email, no issue. But you're not, as you say, going in there sniping at them. And I would say that's bordering on unethical. And I know the listeners are most certainly not in that camp. So I love your approach there. It's sharing it and say, listen, here, this might help you. Check it out. Or indeed, if somebody else, a colleague, whom you've discussed the whole blog linking thing with before, if they come across something, they can share a link to your website. So at least you're giving somebody a business card to give to somebody else. Think of it like that. It's more exposure. It's more, I suppose it's more touch points to your practice. And that's what it's all about. As a business, WebHealer, we sponsor the podcast, Rory, and we absolutely thoroughly enjoy doing it. We speak to loads of members from the Facebook group. I've heard from 2 members today specifically, looking at their websites, giving them some advice. It's fantastic. We have many different touch points with your audience. We meet people at in-person events. We, send newsletters. We try and be everywhere. And if you write a blog, you'll be doing the same way. You're marketing yourself in the same manner. It's about putting yourself out there, that old phrase, put yourself out there. And as boring as it might sound, writing 300 to 500 words on a particular topic, thought piece, controversial, topical thing, news item, that is actually helping put yourself out there. And it might take 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe even a year to get one email on the back of that. But if you write 100 blog posts, that's 100 emails over a period of time, which turns into how many different sessions, so it's about being there, constantly doing this, constantly building your touch points and spreading your expertise as much as you can far and wide. And if you're going to be on these social media platforms, God knows, I don't know what to post on them. So if you have something written already for your website, isn't it fantastic to be able to reuse it in a quality and kind of a value add way?
Yeah, and I think blogs are the gift that keep on giving. When we're talking about networking in a traditional sense, you'd be maybe going to events or meetings. Maybe these are in person or online, and you've only given that part of you for the time that you're present. With a blog, you give that part of you, and it stays around. It kind of lives a lot longer than maybe just being there at an event and talking to someone. They could go back, they could reference it. Conversations are easily forgotten. So I think that is very, very useful. And you did mention our Facebook group. It would be very remiss of me not to mention that if you want to become a member of our Facebook group, type in Counselling Tutor into Facebook and we'll let you in. There's lots of conversations, including ones that Daragh gets actively involved in regarding helping people out in terms of, website design and blog posts and any aspect really of making sure that you're found on the website. And as you said, you are our sponsor. WebHealer is a sponsor of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. I found this conversation absolutely fascinating. I certainly have written a few notes down, Daragh, on blogging, and I may very well just tune my blogs up on some of my personal stuff to reflect this new information. So it just goes to say...
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, there you go. Thank you so much. I guess it just goes to say for me, Daragh McLoughlin from WebHealer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode by visiting counsellingtutor.com.